So our guest today gave me the title of this episode, From the Old to the New. That's a good title for a testimony, because a testimony is often told as a story of a great change in a person who has encountered Jesus. It's a story of repentance and faith. In other words, it's the story of turning away from sin and following Jesus. And this title for the testimony got me thinking about the central reasons for why Christians are different than they were before they became Christians. The testimony of each Christian is not merely the story of a moral change in a person. It is, however, something much more glorious, something much more awesome, and I say that in the old sense of the word, and it is beyond human reason. The point at which a testimony changes from the old to the new is a tremendous miracle called regeneration. Or you may have heard of it being called being born again. In John 3, Jesus talks about regeneration to Nicodemus. He said, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So it's necessary to be born again. You may have heard preachers say something like this, you must be born again. To which the audience may respond like Nicodemus does, how can a man be born when he is old? He doesn't have a clue what Jesus is talking about. You see, Nicodemus is thinking like a Pharisee. He is thinking, what must I do to be born again? Is he seriously considering entering into his mother's womb a second time? And thankfully, Jesus didn't end the conversation there, or else the 6 o'clock news would have been rather interesting. So Jesus continues, truly, truly I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. So the nature of this birth is spiritual. It is transcendent above human reason, so we cannot understand how this happens, or even when it happens. It is a mystery. It's a mystery to the natural world. We have human minds and human words which cannot express or explain these most wonderful truths. Great minds of the past have boggled over this, but still we settle in faith, understanding the Lord declares, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. This new birth is completely the work of God. Think of childbirth. When the midwife shouts, push! Is she talking to the baby or the mother? And after the baby is born, does the midwife say, congratulations and well done to the baby or the mother? Of course it's the mother, so it is with the new birth. We have no part to add. It is the Spirit who raises us from spiritual death. The person who asks, what must I do to be born again, has got it all wrong. The answer to that question is nothing. We cannot do anything to entice God to raise us to life. It is wholly His initiative. It is completely and only by grace we are born again. So what happens in this new birth? Well, we are raised from spiritual death to spiritual life. We are able to turn to God and turn away from sin. We are made new. The whole disposition of our soul is changed. Our mind is different. Our desires are different. Our affections are different. We are no longer governed by the rule of sin, but set free to be governed by the Spirit. This is the miracle of the new birth. This does not mean that we are transformed to be like Christ straight away, but it means we are on the journey of this transformation. And so a person might ask, how can I know I'm born again? Well, in John 3, Jesus says, it is like the wind. And the wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So we can hear the effect the wind has. We hear the rustle of the leaves or the whistle of the wind, or we can even see the effects of the wind. Trees sway and hair blows. So it is with the new birth. Because our mind is changed by the Spirit, the Word of God becomes alive to us. It changes us, especially in the preaching of the Word. Because our desires are changed by the Spirit, we desire to be like Christ. And because our affections are changed, we begin to delight in who God is. And as a result of this, true Christian duty lies in the affections. For we enjoy God. We enjoy God on Sundays and Sunday worship. We enjoy Him in prayer, in Bible study, in conversation. And the aim of our life as a result of the new birth is to enjoy God. And we are only able to enjoy Him because of it. Here's a story of how God made Ivor new to enjoy Him. Well, it's good to have you on for episode 6, I think, of the podcast, Known by God. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here, James. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Good stuff.
Yeah, good to be here.
So, tell me about the early years of your life. Where do you start your journey?
Well, I was born in Rathfriland, and my parents were Bill Trimble, William Robert Trimble, Bill Trimble, and my mother was May Trimble, and I have a brother and 2 sisters, William and Clara, and married to Grace from Kilkeel, and I have one boy, Adam, 16 years old now, and I went initially to Ivor Primary School and then left and went to Rathfriland High School, So born and bred in Rathfriland, lived in Newry Street at the start, and then moved to School Road. Then went from School Road up to Downpatrick Street, and then moved from Downpatrick Street back down to Newry Street.
Goodness, you've moved a good bit.
Where I live now, from Newry Street up to the Castle Hill, where we're living as a family there now.
Very good.
So that's a bit about me, suppose, more so,
Yeah,
and that's born and bred Rathfriland and all my life, like, so yeah.
That was here. So what about the early years?
Well, the early years of my life, I suppose, are left school, and to be fair, at the age of 16, and school really didn't play a big part in my life, wasn't really interested in school life, probably the only thing I was really interested in school life was probably sports, but as far as academically, I wasn't really interested, I didn't do well at school. I left school at 16, and I suppose probably the main factor in that there, my dad had a family, a business, an electrical business, and suppose whenever I was a young boy, I always, when I got home from school, I always left to with him in the van to go out to pick up the men and look around the jobs, and I was always interested in that sort of thing. So the electrical came to me fairly quick, and I just wanted to do that, So I left school, and I hadn't really enough of that interest in school.
Yeah.
So, and then, as I say, I moved on then and went to Portadown Training College when I left school for the first year, and served my time as an apprentice electrician in Portadown Training Centre. And I had to stay in Portadown. My mum and dad left me over on a Sunday night, and I wasn't all that fussed about it.
Right.
I didn't like being away from home on a Sunday night. I didn't like being away from home at all. I would just rather have been at home all the time and staying at home.
Yes.
But yeah, I went to Portadown College, as I say, stayed there all week, and eventually I came home, and my dad had the family electrical business, and I got involved with it and served my time there for 5 years.
Right.
That's the length of time you had to serve your time then.
Right.
So then my dad said, look, Ivor, there's not really a lot of point staying here, if you ever really want to move on at this business, he says, you'd be better doing bigger work and bigger jobs. So a couple of lads in the town here I was friendly with, and they got me employment with a firm in Belfast called Crown House Engineering,
Okay.
who were probably the largest electrical company in Belfast, and I stayed there for 10 years.
Right.
So 10 years in Belfast working with Belfast men was a learning curve.
Yeah. Yes.
I can assure you, probably one of the best experiences in my life.
Right.
Certainly from all aspects of the game. Belfast men were absolutely brilliant tradesmen.
Right.
And I have to say, I made some good friends from, I suppose, both sections of the community, and to be fair, it was probably one of probably the best 10 years of my life up there. I really enjoyed it. And it stood by me whenever I come back home again to, I suppose, work for my dad, but suppose progress into taking the family business on, and that's eventually what happened. When my father got a bit older, I took the business over, and that's probably the best years of my life as far as electrical work was concerned.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Very good. And was there any spiritual influences at all in those years?
Not really, James. I suppose. We'll go back into the context, I suppose, of church life down here. Look, my dad was involved in the Sunday school down here for many years. I think him and Sam Irvin were joint superintendents of the Sunday school when it was maybe the two churches, second and third then. I think that's the way it was, So, like church life, church life had a big part in my life. I suppose I went to Sunday school and faithfully every Sunday. And I suppose I went to church faithfully. And if church was on a Sunday night, I went to church on a Sunday night. And I suppose did all the normal things when I was down here at church. Sang in the choir for Children's Day. And I was happy enough at that time doing that, and to be fair, church life here was good, as a child, and my father and mother had a big influence on me going to church every Sunday, and I have to say I came from a faithful home. My father and mother were faithful, and to be fair, I got a good opportunity to get an understanding of the gospel when I was a young boy, And I did move on to the Friends Hall across the road here. That's come back a few years now. I would have had an interest at one time going to the Friends Hall, and my father was much involved in the Friends Hall, spurred life over there, and my father was involved in the quintet here in Rathfriland. That was the Irvin brothers and Rowan Stewart. Right. And my dad and they would have sang over in the hall over there quite often, and in actual fact, I think they would have been influential in organising speakers. Like my dad took it one month and Sam Irvin maybe took it the next month and so on. So that sort of thing, to be fair, I had a good time over there too and enjoyed it,
Good stuff.
Well, at the early stages of my life, I suppose I was going through the routine of going to church, but I wasn't really interested in, I suppose, church life all that much, really, But having said that, I still enjoyed it, It was a good part of my life, as a young boy.
And so what interest did you have around that time as well?
Well, the main interest I would have had at that particular time, I suppose from about 16, 17 years of age, really got involved in the football club. Down in our own local club down here, Rathfriland Rangers. And spent some happy days down there for a considerable number of years. Played football from I was 16 until I was about 30. And then got involved in a bit of golf, played golf for a while, not that well, but I played anyhow.
You still play a bit, do you?
I still play a bit, Adam plays more so than I do. He's sort of taken the clubs over and I don't get using them very often now, you know what I mean? No. So that's the way of it, And he's doing grand, he's doing good at it, he's an interest in it,
Good stuff.
But the one passion, I suppose, that I had, or the main interest that I had in life when I was a young boy was fishing.
Okay.
I was greatly interested in fishing.
Right.
And mainly, I suppose, because my dad was I suppose, fanatical about fishing. He just wanted to fish a lot, and he was great, and I really enjoyed my young days fishing with my father. Having said, reflecting here, when I got involved in all those things like the football club, and I got involved in the rugby club, and got involved in the Warrenpoint Golf Club, well, I suppose I got involved in the other things in life too that came along. I suppose I got involved or was influenced, introduced to drink probably at that particular time, and to be fair, that lifestyle played a big part of my life from, well, I would say from the age of 20 till the age of 50. Was lucky to have good company when I was doing those sort of things and when I was involved in that type of lifestyle,
Yeah. If you fall into the wrong group, then...
Well, if you fall into the wrong group, I suppose that's what we're all hoping and praying, that for family, that they don't fall into the wrong group,
Yeah. So you said that kind of took up from up until you were 50?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
So what...
And then things changed.
Then things changed,
yeah. Then things changed.
What went on there?
Well, things changed from the point of view... my dad had been involved in a lot of horticulture work about the town and district. That would have been mainly farmyards and that type of work. And but it sort of got a wee opening into schoolwork and that sort of thing, So I'd come back from Belfast at that time. I suppose I was probably maybe I was sort of getting to be the main person within the family business at that time. Dad was stepping back a wee bit, and the work was a bit different when we got into the school work. It was a bit more like with the work I was been used doing in Belfast. It was bigger work, more complicated work, and I suppose I got involved in that. But as I say, I was doing a lot of work for the education boards, Southern Education and the South Eastern Education. And one particular day, I got a phone call to go to Kilkeel, to go to the nursery school in Kilkeel, and there were problems up there in the nursery school. So when I got up to the nursery school, it was grand. There was no sort of security the way things are now, signing in, whatever, you just knocked the door, basically, went on. And I suppose the first person that you went to meet was the principal. You sort of had to make yourself known to the principal in the school, So whenever I got up, I asked for the principal, and I suppose this lady came out to meet me, or this young girl came out to meet me at that time, and introduced herself as Grace Nicholson. So she had a few problems, got them sorted out, and everybody was sort of going home. I didn't leave till about 5, and Grace was locking up, and she said, "You want a cup of tea?" And we got chatting, and one thing led to another. And then we decided we would go out to, this is the laugh of it, we would go out to Cranfield House for a tea.
Right.
And one thing led to another. And that's how I suppose Grace and I got involved, Yeah. But Grace was a big influence in my life. And suppose at that particular time, Grace had been playing the organ down in Annalong Presbyterian Church. I think maybe she finished up playing there for 10 or 12 years.
Right.
But in the process, I suppose, whenever I was going up to see Grace, I suppose it was mainly on a Sunday night. And I didn't go to Annalong. I went to Kilkeel Moore Church up there.
Right.
And at that particular time, the Reverend McGaggy, Dr. McGaggy would have been the minister up there. So I went along on a Sunday night to church, or along with Dick and May, and then Grace would have come back home and would have met up at the house. And the good part about it was, I suppose, May always made a good supper, like.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it.
That was well,
that was a big part of it. But anyhow, when I was at Moore Church on a Sunday night, the Reverend McGaggy up there was very influential in my life. I have to say, I really enjoyed going to hear the Reverend McGaggy on a Sunday night. And in actual fact, the Reverend McGaggy would have been a personal friend of my dad's. He was a great fisherman. Right. A really good fisherman, and my dad and him would have spent some time fishing over in the west as well. And on one particular occasion, I was lucky, Dr. McGaggy and I went to fish one of the big lakes over there too. We went to fish actually Loch Con over there, and it was great. So he had a big influence in my life, and I got more involved in the church up there, and then I started to go to the midweek up there. on a Sunday night, and then over a period of time I'd been going to church and going to the midweek, and Dr. McGaggy was having a mission, I think, or taking a mission out in Glenaughlan Orange Hall.
Okay.
So I decided I would go to the mission in Glenaughlan Orange Hall, and I think it lasted for a full week, from Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah.
And you know, I do believe at that particular time, I suppose things were changing in my life. You know, I do believe that God was really working in my life at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So went to the mission, and after the mission was over, up in Mourne they always have a fisherman's service every year. Because of the fishing industry up there, and they always sort of have a fisherman's service. So I was really enjoyed going to the fisherman's service. But this, I think it was 2002. I went to the fisherman's service that night, and it was the Reverend Shaw Thompson who was speaking that night.
Right.
I think the Reverend Shaw Thompson's over in Damara now. Maybe I'm not sure if retired, but that's where he would have been in my time anyhow. You know.
Yes.
The Reverend Shaw Thompson was speaking that night at the fisherman's service, and as well as I suppose speaking, he was certainly giving his testimony as well. And at that particular night, as I listened to him giving his testimony, you know, I just felt that things were changing greatly in my heart, you know. And you know that song I suppose that we sing quite often. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Yeah. And suppose that particular night when Shaw was speaking, at some period in the service, I just felt, I suppose that's the way it was for me too, that, you know, probably in my past life, where it wasn't just as good maybe as I wanted it to be, that, you know, the burden was lifted on my chest that night, you know. I wasn't really sure, sitting in the service that night, that what did really happen, but that's the way it seemed to me. So went home anyhow, and probably went back to Dick and Mays that night, and went home, and Monday or Tuesday of the following week, I could feel myself being sort of, not troubled, but, you know, I just felt that I needed to go to speak to somebody. So on the Wednesday evening, Dr. McGaggy always stayed in the manse.
Right. So
I didn't phone him up, right, but I just went up to the manse, and I knocked on the door, and how you doing, Ivor? It's good to see you. Come on in, excuse me. Someone in, and we had a bit of a chat, and I told him the situation, you know.
Yeah.
And he says, well, Ivor, you know, I couldn't help but notice, you know, I suppose, how things have moved on in your life. You know, you've been faithful to church on a Sunday night, faithful to the midweek, and then you were out in the mission for a week. And I told him, I says, look, I just think, you know, that there's been a change in my life, you know, and we had a bit of a discussion for a while. And he said, Ivor, you know, I just think, you know, I didn't say, he would have said, he said to me, Ivor, the Holy Spirit has come into your life, and that's the way it felt, you know. I just felt a completely and utterly changed person. And we had a bit of a conversation for a while, and he gave me a couple of little books, like read Mark and whatever, and he said to me, Ivor, you know, don't get too deep. He says, read the Gospels, and that's what I did whenever I went home, you know. And he prayed with me, and I suppose I'd have to say, as far as my spiritual life is concerned, I'd say I probably never looked back on that night on the fisherman's service in Mourne. And that's probably the big changing period of my life. From moving from one period of my life into the spiritual context of life, you know. And as I say, I don't think, before I've looked back since that happened.
Something you said there about I was saying you just had a gaining interest in spiritual things, or in going to church or meetings. And I think that's a great word. Because that's often how it is with many people. They just have a gaining interest.
Funny, from the period that before the fisherman's service, well, I did have a bit of an interest in reading the Bible and praying, but after that service and after that time I spent with Dr. McGarry, you know, it's wonderful when I came back home, then I just wanted to read the Bible every night, and I just wanted to pray every night, and I wasn't doing that before.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful the way things change, you know.
Yeah.
And just that God was working in my life, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it was great. And I really enjoyed my time up in Mourne. And then I suppose after that, Reverend McGackie retired, and Reverend William Bingham became minister up in Mourne. And suppose I just feel that William took over where the Reverend McGackie had been. I really enjoyed going to hear William up there. And again, I wanted to go to the midweek, and I wanted to go to church on a Sunday night, and sometimes an odd Sunday morning, to be fair, you know. And but having said that, we had faithful ministers here in second and third down through the years, you know. And to be fair, it just wasn't my time. Mourne was the time that God spoke to me, and that's just the way it was, you know.
Yeah. And so you talked about a change in your life, and what does that look like? What happened?
Well, now I suppose, James, you know, things have moved on for me, you know, down in second and third. You know, it's great. I suppose that God spoke to me, but you really do want to have an interest in your own church, you know. And for by still having an interest up in Mourne, maybe not just as much as I had, I really have felt that God has brought me along in this church, like, you know. I suppose I could go on more often to the midweek here, and probably never did miss church life here, you know. And over this past few years, I suppose especially from the time your father's, what's that, 7 years now, you know. As I say, I've really enjoyed the church here. Your father's been a big influence in my life here. He's given me a few opportunities here to speak and whatever, and I found that very encouraging, to be fair, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I've just moved on a good bit down in second and third. A few years ago now, maybe 3 years ago probably, I suppose had the privilege of coming to the eldership here, and that made a big change in my life as well, you know. And you just want to go out and talk to people about the things of God and spiritual things, and I've had some great opportunities and some great conversations with people, because your dad would have encouraged us when we came to the eldership just not to be just doing the work in the church, to get out, and the pastoral care was a big part of it. I think the pastoral care has been a big part of it for me. And you know, you do really find that out and about with people is great to hear other people's stories, and you can tell them stories, and we can be a great encouragement to each other. So you know, I've really enjoyed time since your dad's come. He's been faithful to the word here every Sunday. The church has moved on, I feel. I think we're a happy church here. I think we're a happy family, you know, and I do see a great future for the church, you know, in second and third. Things have been stemmed a bit, suppose, with the present situation with COVID, but we hope and pray that in the future we can get back to normality, and that we can move on again, you know.
Has there been a big impact on your personal devotion with God?
Yeah, there's been certainly a big impact on my personal devotion. I suppose whenever I was in school, I was never really interested in reading a book. Probably, I think I read 2 books at school because I had to read them in English or whatever, you know, but really wasn't interested. Now, there's probably not a night that I wouldn't be involved in spending time reading, you know. And to be fair, I have read quite a few books over the past few years now. That certainly had a big impact on my spiritual life. And I would, you know, we listened to that story about Daniel, where it said that Daniel prayed 3 times a day. And I suppose there's probably not a day that I probably wouldn't pray 3 times a year. You know, my prayer life has certainly come along a long way. And you know, I suppose a young fellow there at 16 years of age, and I suppose family life, you're trying to influence Adam, and thankfully, to be fair, Adam has come on well in the church here. You know yourself, he's involved in the praise group here and involved most things in church here, you know, and Grace is greatly involved in church here as well. So as a family, our spiritual life is good.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a big blessing to us. Like, and I suppose our spiritual life is consistent at home, and over this past while since church hasn't been happening down in church, and we're on air every Sunday. You know, the three of us sit down there on a Sunday morning, and we religiously sit down and listen to your dad every morning there, and it's been great, you know. So yeah, my spiritual life has moved on for me a lot, and I thank God for it.
That's good. I'm just interested, is there any books that have influenced you?
Well, the books that have interested me, James, I'm not sure why you would read them or not, but I'm greatly interested in books by a fellow called Lang, G.H. Lang.
Okay.
And yeah, it would be deep, you know, but he would be, suppose, more in, it'd be more interested in I didn't say more interested, but it would go along the lines of dispensational premillennialism, you know what I mean? He would be greatly about the rapture and all that sort of thing, you know. And look, it's difficult, but I enjoy reading it, and I've no hard line about, you know, why I go along with either way, with amillennialism, whatever. I just enjoy reading his books. Like, we'll not get into the details, you know, of where we go, but that's probably where I've been spending a bit of time in over this past couple of years, you know.
Well, it's important to read.
It's important to read, yeah. And to be fair, yeah. Look, the most important thing is that we're reading and we're open to learn about the things of God and whatever. And as long as we have our eyes focused on our Lord and focused on heaven, well, the finer details of the ministry, well, then we'll leave that to people like your dad and whatever, you know, and we'll listen attentively and enjoy it, you know.
Yes, yeah, that's a good word. Have you any just final advice or exhortations or encouragements that you'd like to share with our congregation or any other people?
Well, the one thing I'd like to share, you know, I probably didn't come to faith until I didn't come to faith till I was 50 years old. And, you know, I had a good upbringing, and my mum and dad and family, and I suppose two sisters were a big influence in my life, and my brother too, you know. But I suppose I didn't really, as I say, early on in life have a good interest in spiritual things, but I know my dad particularly, and my mum too, yeah, both the parents would have been praying for me, and probably family as well too, you know. So the one thing I would like to say to people, you know, as I go out and about and actually visit, and I've had some conversations lately with some of our congregation who would be in the same situation as probably a lot of families are, where people have not come to faith in their home.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a brother or a sister or an uncle or an aunt or a husband or a wife, you know. And suppose the one thing I would want to maybe close with here as we maybe come near the end of our time would say, you know, don't give up.
Yeah.
On praying for ones and you're praying for your loved ones, like, because as I say, I do believe in all sincerity that, well, the prayers of friends and the prayers of my family got me to where I am today. And I think that's a very important thing. And if you're discouraged in your family about loved ones who have not come to faith and you're concerned about them, I would say quite categorically, keep on praying, because I have no doubt that it was through my family's prayers that I came to faith later on in life. Like, so that's the one thing I would want to leave with people from our congregation and in general out there. You know, keep on praying. Don't give up.
Good stuff. All right, well, thanks very much for coming on.
No problem, James. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Okay, thank you. Good job.